The Apophatic Wilderness is the third full-length album from Verberis, a New Zealand born and I believe now Germany-based artist who has collaborated basically as a quartet with various other artists for the last several releases. They got their start about 10 years ago, maybe a little bit earlier, and every release has been additive in terms of gaining that oeuvre, gaining the production values, finding the right spot, the right fit for each release. They've all been fairly abstract in terms of their complicated and esoteric themes, but the exploration of black death metal is it's relatable to some other things like chthonic cervix and Bolzer and whatnot, depending on the release. Ultimately, it's a mixture of blackened death metal. So the thing with this band is that their first record was entirely underrated from my point of view. I think it didn't get the due attention that it deserves. It should be a record that inspires a lot of enthusiasm for a lot of people for not only its handle of aggression and riffs and almost a catharsis style approach to that aggression of black metal and its thrashing death metal component. When we look to their second full-length album, Adumbration of the Veiled Logos, we begin to see the full mastery of all the people involved. I feel like their production values had reached a real peaking touch for its time, and the performances on that record were world-class, thanks to members of Heresiarch and Ulcerate adding to the fray. Although, from what I understand, they'd played on previous records as well. I don't have all the details, because this type of band keeps everything pretty close to their chest in general. I see this record as almost the inverse goal of the last one. Yeah, maybe not the goal, but the method. The last record, they were reaching for something bigger than itself, for a bigger understanding, for the numinous, what we can't quite get to. And now on this record, they're reaching below. We're going down into the underworld. We're taking that dive into the depths of the nether, and in a way, this record reflects that with a different style of narrative. It's much more verbose and contemplative along the way, and explains its methods step by step in a way that is almost alchemical. So to get a sense of the heated center point of this record, well, we'll just cut to a song, and then I'll kind of explain what's going on in context. So this record was split into 4 parts, but it's essentially 3 songs and 3 events here. The first one is opening narrative. It sets the scene, it zooms out, it scans its surroundings, and then it begins its induction into this netherworld as the way I see it. That should test anyone's patience if you're looking for a fiery opening piece, because it really just simmers and descends slowly in its float downward as we progress through it. That isn't to say it's not maybe a brutal piece. It's not an aggressive song. It's just that it presents itself in a way that is simmering and boiling, kind of in the way that the Furnaces of Palingenesia did. From that point, when we get to that sample that we just played, we're sort of in the heated throes of everything collapsing, of the descent happening, and the most involved part of the record. It's the centerpiece of the record, and it's the journey to the core of the experience, as it were. And at that point, we start to realize that this is maybe more of not necessarily a psychedelic metal album, in any traditional sense, but I do think there's a reason they brought in people from outside of the black death metal experience to lend something new to this one. And so we start to get this sense of hallucinatory, of a sort of a journey happening over the course of this middle song. So beyond the emptying of God, we have the soul moving about in this underworld in labyrinthine privation, and there's this feeling of lack that they're moving towards. It's where the general challenge of the record happens, and I think this is where most people connect with this album overall. I think this is where maybe the guitar parts are the most interesting, and we starting to grasp the virtuosic drumming on this record, as people have certainly emphasized the fact that the drummer from Ulcerate plays in this band, and I'm just as excited as anyone else, because that is one of my favorite groups along with this one. But that's just one part of the machine that is impressive here. Really, if you're a fan of the previous record, you'll have noticed by the second song that this is a much more clear production value. this is a much less brutally achieved mix and master. There isn't so much of a harried black death metal scrape to it, and now they've balanced everything out in a way where it's all, and here everything is melded and melted together into one experience. It cuts away on some of the bass guitar definition. It pushes the drums back just a little bit in the mix, but I think it works out with the several guitar layers being the main focus, and it allows the vocals to not rescind entirely into the background as they sometimes did on the previous record. And that counts for a lot because, again, there are a lot of lyrics. This is a very verbose album. It has a lot to say, and you're going to want to look at the lyric sheet when you listen to it. Beyond that point, it really is a matter of riff and rhythm as we push into the final piece, which makes up the entirety of side B. The main brunt of the experience is where we end up. For me, this is kind of the wash of the waves. It's sort of the distortion beyond. It's where we're kind of headed through all of this. It's the acceptance of the place in the underworld, and there's a spike in aggression. It feels exciting as it arrives. Overall, I think it's a personal thing to experience, especially if you're a fan of this kind of thing, and I could go on and talk about it forever, but really the thing is that this is, again, what I'd said in the past is that Verberis are a world-class act in terms of what they're presenting as a variation of black death metal, and the way that you could present it in a strong philosophical but also personally artistic vision. There's so much considered put into each one of these songs that I think they've done a really fantastic job of representing themselves with this record. For me, this is a very well above average. This is a very high recommendation. It is one of the essential records of the year so far. It is one of the best records of March as well. If you're a fan of this type of music in terms of modern and maybe sometimes avant-garde black death metal or dissonant death metal, this is an essential release. Go ahead and check it out. It's been out for about a week now, and read my review if you'd like more information.